G'day, fellas.
Hey.
G'day, boys. How are you?
Good.
Good. How are you, Roo? We've got you by phone today.
Yeah, I've just had to go down south, mate, for some family commitments. So apologies for not catching up with you boys there at the studio. I look forward to catch those days where we catch up and have a chat. But yeah, I'm just sitting in a car park with the best reception that I can in this southwest country town.
Well, we admire your commitment, mate. You're doing well down there.
Mate, family first
Oh, yeah.
always, so
Yeah.
good on you for
Yeah,
going
but
down
you know,
and,
I couldn't miss out on today's topic of nuclear energy, which ties in with our sort of climate change discussion that's been going on for a couple of episodes now.
We've been a bit environmental the last few weeks, haven't we? It's something
have.
that we're all
Yeah.
pretty, maybe we've got slightly alternative views in some ways, but we're all environmentalists at heart and we're all keen to see and live in a nice, clean environment. So this was kind of a natural progression for us, I guess, wasn't it? Sort of
It was
talking about,
yeah.
I guess, power generation and,
Well,
we live in a modern society where we're all very addicted to electricity. So, yeah, how do we make it as cleanly and as environmentally sustainably as possible?
we kind of
Well, your point there, Smithy, of natural progression is a good little tie-in, isn't it? Because I wonder whether nuclear is a natural progression for us as a society.
Yeah, well, that's, I guess, going to be the thrust of what we're talking about today is the nuclear power debate. It seems to have popped up a bit in Australia again recently. So, interesting.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, but before anyone listening tunes out, because nuclear is a bit boring, maybe. You know, having a look into it, I found it quite interesting.
So did
Can I just start with a couple of nuclear jokes? I just thought, just to maybe spice it up a little bit, get people interested.
Couple of old man
It
jokes.
might just. What's that?
Couple of old man jokes.
Yeah, okay, here's one. Look, what did the nuclear power plant worker say to his co-worker who had a fishing rod in the line in the reactor? How's the fishing, John?
Oh, wow.
Hey,
Boom.
hey. What about this one? What about this one?
Oh, he's got to be
What do
better
you
than that.
call a nuclear powered mobile phone? Shmobile.
Oh.
Hey?
Wow.
And this one's probably one not for the kiddies. What does a nuclear power plant and a prostitute have in common? I wouldn't enter either without protection. Always say the best till last.
Yeah, the last one was the best one for sure. Yeah.
Well,
But anyway,
I
it's a
guess
good topic.
Chernobyl is probably a good place to start, isn't it? Because a lot of people are very concerned about that aspect of nuclear energy.
Yeah, and then
Is-
you got your Fukushima more recently. Really ruined it for nuclear, didn't it?
Yeah, 3 Mile Island in the late 80s, was it?
70s, 80s,
70s,
something
yeah.
like that, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's probably one of the cons that people, if you look at a list of pros and cons of everything, I mean, nuclear energy, we're trying to look at alternative solutions, aren't we? And
Yeah.
nuclear is definitely a solution to our energy problems, but based around sort of, sustainability, reliability, energy security, those kind of things, waste, land footprint, if you're thinking about solar.
Yeah, that's a big one, land footprint.
Yeah. So I think one of the cons was, is it safe? Is it reliable? Are we, is it going to malfunction and are we going to end up with a Chernobyl or one of those things? And I think if you look at the last sort of 20 odd years, there's 18,500 reactors around the world in 36 countries. France produces 70% of their energy from nuclear energy and Russia about 19%.
Yep.
And the US is the largest producer of nuclear energy.
Yeah, but they've got quite an aging nuclear
Yes.
power generation grid,
Yep.
don't they? Like a lot of it was built in the 60s and 70s. And I think the argument in the US now is that a lot of it is coming up towards requiring sort of like major capital expense to keep them running and to keep them safe. But I guess one of the things about the nuclear sort of fleet in the US and around the world is it was sort of older technology, wasn't it? Like I think we've come a long way since the 60s and 70s in our ability to sort of make safe nuclear generation. Like you guys are the same sort of rough vintage as me, and we all grew up, growing up in the 80s and remember Chernobyl, which I think was like 1986. remember seeing the TV screens and all the bald kids on there, and then all the poor old kids dying of cancer and leukemia and all that sort of stuff. And it was a bit traumatizing. I think, like you said, that really put people off that nuclear sort of way of going.
Yeah.
Like before that, it was.
And The Simpsons probably.
The Simpsons probably ruined it, yeah.
The old nuclear reactor with the green, goop waste.
100%, yeah.
Blinky,
Mr. Burns pushing barrels of nuclear waste into trees in the local park and stuff. But
and the three-eyed fish and that kind of thing, that really probably gave nuclear a bad name.
Yeah.
You were a bit concerned about it. But the funny...
Jonesy, it's a good point. Jonesy, it's a good point you make that there are so many power plants or reactors around the world, and there's about 3 major incidences that we can reflect on over the last 40 years. It's and like Smitty said, that the US, they've got 92 commercial reactors, and 20% of their electricity is supplied by nuclear, and that's since the 1990s. So we're talking 30 odd years, and there hasn't been an incident in those 92 reactors in the States. And that's what I reckon these nuclear powered denialists or people against nuclear power hang their hat on, is these 3 major catastrophic events. I'm not diminishing how important or how bad they were for humans and environment, but it just seems that there's those 3 incidences that every resource you go to that argue against nuclear power always use that as their crutch. Those incidences, particularly Chernobyl, had such devastating effects on the environment and humans, which is true, but it doesn't mean you have to write off a whole source of energy because of it.
So Germany have just closed their last 3 nuclear power plants.
I saw that.
Do you know what did they do, or what did they build to produce their energy? Coal-based.
They're firing up their old coal power plants that they'd shut down, haven't they? Germany's a real funny one.
Yeah, so you can look at the environmental impact of nuclear energy. The uranium, the plutonium, the waste. But then you've got to produce energy somehow.
Yeah,
and
it's been some coal.
So we talked about it in our net zero and our carbon episodes of we want to reduce emissions, and what have they done? They've fired up their coal power plants, power plants again, where nuclear energy is carbon-free electricity.
Yeah, literally carbon-free.
I reckon they did that, mate, because they went so heavily towards the renewables like wind and solar. They just pumped so much investment into that, and now they're realising that it's so unreliable and intermittent, and it's up their energy prices so much that they've had to just resort back to coal. I don't know why that excuses them closing down nuclear power. That's a question, but they've obviously gone back to coal for an immediate source of, reducing power costs, I guess.
Well, yeah, because they just shut down their nuclear plants. Like they would have produced, they had 19. Shut them all down.
Yeah.
It's such a funny one because they obviously had that issue with the supply of Russian energy coming and the Nord Stream pipeline, mysteriously exploding under the sea, which, apparently that's the thing. So you would have thought, if anything, they would have relied more heavily on their nuclear plants.
Yeah.
Surely they're not all just running out of, going out of commission this year due to natural causes. It seems like they're obviously closing them down, but for a country that's so obsessed with green, like Germany, have really embraced the renewables and trying to get towards zero carbon emissions and all that sort of stuff. And it seems really strange that they've gone, yep, we're going to close down these running nuclear plants and we're going to fire up coal power plants. It seems bizarre.
Yeah. So if you look at prevented mortality too, this is from the Environmental Science and Technology Journal in 2013. The prevented mortality in greenhouse gases from historical and projected nuclear power by 2000 and whenever it was 29, they reckon 1.8 million lives will be saved through reduction in respiratory, cardiovascular, cancer and heart issues based on the emissions from coal. So less emissions, prevented mortality, health benefits. So no excess mortality found in countries with nuclear facilities based on, the area around them, because everyone's concerned that nuclear are coming up. But this study found that there wasn't too many instances of health issues around nuclear reactors, and around coal producing ones there's lots.
Yeah, I mean, you can see the pollution coming out of a coal-fired power plant. You can see it.
Yeah.
I mean, when you look at a nuclear plant, they've got those giant cooling stacks, but that's steam.
Yeah.
It's not polluted steam. It's water vapor. It's steam. So,
right.
it's a funny one. Like, I don't know.
I wonder whether I saw some stat that in the USA, reactors generally operate 92% of the time, and why it's not 100% of the time is because reactors need to be closed down for a while to be refueled. So I wonder whether that might be a factor in the German ones. That it's coincidentally 3 reactors have been closed down to be refueled, to be reused again. I don't know. I don't know how long it takes to refuel a reactor, but that could be a possibility as to why.
I think they shut them down for good.
I think they've just mothballed them. Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So I sort of did a bit of a dive into the whole nuclear debate, and one of the main things that people seem to debate nuclear on is its cost.
Yeah, its upfront cost is high.
It's upfront cost and the lead time to build a nuclear power plant. And I understand that. Like, these days it seems to cost many, many, many billions of dollars and many years to build a power plant. But if you had them and they were operating, AKA like Germany, like they usually say, like you look at France, so they went into nuclear real heavy in the 60s and 70s, and like CJ said, I've heard figures anywhere between 70 and 80% of their electricity is coming from nuclear, and they've never had a single accident. Their power is, they don't have interruptions to their power supply. They haven't suffered blackouts or anything with this sort of Russian, war and limit of like fuel and gas. And their energy prices are extremely cheap because they've got the reactors working and in place. So they've obviously got a system where, like Roo said, they've got to shut them down every now and then for routine maintenance or refueling. But what they do is they just put out a bit of extra capacity from their other plants, and the whole grid works. But it's very baffling why you would shut down a running one.
Yeah.
Or 3 running ones.
And revert to coal.
To coal. Yeah.
I think it looks good. They probably don't mention that they fired up the coal again, but we've shut down our nuclear plants. Look, we're doing everything we can to get solar and wind back up and running.
Yeah.
Well, we need coal, but we don't really want to mention that because it wasn't. It's not really environmentally friendly. But if you look at the reliability of them, they seem to be fairly reliable. You're not waiting on the sun or wind or the weather. It's 24 hours. It's zero carbon energy. Yeah.
It's the most reliable source of energy, isn't it?
Yeah.
Really, it's the most reliable. It's just, I guess it's reliant upon uranium mining stores in the world. And it's interesting we talk about Australia. And that the discussion of Australia's got 33% of the world's uranium deposits, and yet we don't have any uranium or nuclear power at all in this country.
It's a really funny one, isn't it? Because we're happy to mine and export and support it through exportation, but we're reluctant to build nuclear power in our own country. Like other countries can do it. That's cool. We'll give you the fuel to do it. Here's the uranium, but
you want to make some nukes? No worries. Yeah, here you go.
Yeah. Well, that's another one of the downsides, or one of the talked about downsides, is people can, build nuclear weapons.
Man, you look at the amount of nuclear weapons that just the US and Russia have, like thousands of warheads, like enough warheads to destroy the entire Earth, many, many, many times over. Like, we've got a lot of nukes. It's not like we've got none.
Yeah, there's international regulations, I think, and as much as these regulations can, how much they stand for, but there are regulations that when a country is given authority to use nuclear power as an energy source, it has some sort of contract that it's not going to use it for weapon experimentation or weapon creation, and that's regularly monitored as well. So you might have heard, previously, and whoever is the governing authority over this is probably, could be conflicted or compromised, but they do go and inspect other countries' nuclear power generators and make sure that weapons aren't being created and it's not being used for that.
Who does the inspecting?
How credible that is, I don't know.
NATO goes in.
Hans Blix.
Yeah. No doubt it'll be those governing countries like America who have a full arsenal of nuclear weapons going out and telling others that they can't have them.
Yeah.
But, South Korea have got them, I guess. Russia. Who knows? Anyway,
I mean, look, Australia is an incredibly politically stable country. We're not like a rogue state or anything like that. I'm pretty sure they would just look at our record keeping around our stockpiles and be like, all right, you've used this much in a reactor, this much is waste. Can you account for it? Where is it? It's over here. Okay, no worries. Did you sell any suitcases of uranium to North Korea? No. Okay.
Done.
Move on.
We're all right.
Exactly. I'm sure there'd be, boundaries put in place or regulations that just make it specific for nuclear energy production. But it's interesting with Australia. You can research all this nuclear energy production and reactors and so on around the world and get all this information. But with Australia, it's just nothing. And the only stuff I could find really of any source, any credibility was from the Climate Council. And you can check out their website, climatecouncil.org.au, and they claim to be an independent, evidence-based organisation on climate science impacts and solutions. And they're funded by independent donors and the key word, philanthropists. So I tried to dig deep into which philanthropists do donate to the Climate Council, and I couldn't find any information. It was giving me the runaround. I even tried a few different alternative search engines, but I still couldn't find anything. But it's interesting that the Climate Council, their quote on their website is, insert a quote, "In fact, nuclear power in Australia makes no sense, and wasting time and energy debating it is a distraction from genuine climate action." And I just thought that comment itself is just so narrow-minded to even eliminate the debate about it, and it's so ignorant to its possibilities. I found it amazing. And then they even quote that, like you said, someone said before earlier, Smitty, it might have been you, that nuclear plants are too expensive and they take a long time to build. And they quote there, the CSIRO says, by far the lowest cost way of producing electricity is with solar and wind. I just find it crazy that they're not even entertaining the thought of alternatives to this. And to me, that seems to be an engineered or a very, very biased from some point of view stance.
Yeah. Don't you reckon that solar and wind have this sort of perception amongst the public that, they're so clean and green and, there's zero problems with it. And when you look into it, there's quite a few problems. Like producing them is a big drama. They've got a lot of different components in them. A lot of them are made in China. There's been evidence that the Chinese are using like Uyghur Muslims in like almost concentration camp style situations to build these solar panels. They have a limited lifespan. You're expending a hell of a lot of carbon up front to make these panels. And then once they finish the end of their life, you can't really recycle them. They're going into landfill and then they need to be replaced. On top of the fact that they need like a massive footprint somewhere on the ground, and particularly in places like Europe, that's obviously a drama for, real estate to put them. And then on top of all of that, you're weather dependent. You need sun or you need wind to actually power these things.
Exactly, Smitty. And I think we covered a lot of that in our climate change episode. And I think we chatted about in that episode, it's 17 more times the minerals required to build solar panels and wind farms than it is a nuclear power station. 17 times more minerals and products needed.
Like there's no question that solar, in terms of producing the panels, all the transport costs, etc., make a hell of a lot more carbon if you're worried about carbon than nuclear power does. Like, I haven't heard anyone successfully debate the fact that, maybe once it's all made and you take out the manufacturing and take out the transport and all that sort of stuff, yeah, maybe you go, okay, solar doesn't generate, but that's sort of like a false way of thinking about it. I think, yeah, it's such a flawed debate, isn't it? There's a lot of people with interest in it, and there's a lot of, lobby groups and philanthropists and people making money off it. It's so hard to see like what the real picture is.
Yeah, totally agree, mate. It's a tricky one.
Yeah, I find I mean, don't get me wrong. I think solar probably has its place somewhere. I just don't think. Well, I think the naivety of the world about what we're going to do and how we're going to get these minerals, and if we want to build, we want to go to net zero, like we talked about in our climate change episodes. Was, you know, we're going to have to find 6 times the amount of copper and nickel and
there. I know what you're saying, mate. And doing my research, there is a lot of hope there with this organisation called ITER, ITER. I don't know if you guys come across it, but their website is iter.org, and it's really interesting. So, if I may, can I just go back to a for dummies explanation on nuclear power? Because I didn't really understand the concept of it. I'm no Albert Einstein. I can't even say his name. But I just wanted to find out how it all works. So if you imagine you've got an atom, like a cell, and in that atom is protons and neutrons, right? That's your nucleus of an atom. Mm-hmm. And around that you've got all these like little floating electrons. When a nuclear power is generated by fission, which is the most popular generation of nuclear power, and that's the separation or the splitting of that nucleus into 2 smaller atoms, and that splitting of it creates energy.
Mm-hmm.
The other option you've got for nuclear energy is fusion, and that's combining 2 smaller nuclei or atoms into one. Now, the first one, fission, is the most popular because it can be controlled in a more controlled environment, and it's less expensive. And so that's what most nuclear power plants use today, and it's based on splitting uranium atoms. So that's where the uranium mining comes into it. But both create energy during the process, much like the combustion of coal and oil and gas, but without the byproducts of the natural fuels. So there's this company, ITER, and they're looking at fusion reactors, which are very, very rare because they are less easily controlled. The reaction is less easily controlled, and it's expensive to create. But there is technology now developing to create this fusion, and fusion energy production, which is pretty much what powers the sun, is based on tritium and deuterium atoms. So not uranium, which would then solve uranium mining as an environmental issue if that's a factor. But then obviously you've got to obtain these mineral atoms as well, and that's one of the problems posed by ITER. But extreme pressure and temperature unites these atoms, and I reckon releases massive amounts of energy, about 7 times more energy than produced by fission. So 7 times more energy, which I found amazing. Anyway, so this company, right, ITER, well, it's not really a company. It's a research project located in southern France, and it's got about 35 participating countries, but the main signatories are China, EU, which fund about 45% of it, India, Japan, Korea, Russia, and the USA. And the goal is to advance fusion science and prepare the way for fusion power plants. And what they've done, and there's this word I've never seen before, tokamak. Have you guys heard of that? It's spelled Tokamak.
No.
It was originally invented by the Soviets in the 50s. And basically what this tokamak machine does, it's an experimental machine, which harnesses within a plasma the heat and energy converted by the fusion reaction. So they've designed this tokamak to then go forward and assess the feasibility of fusion at a large-scale combustion-free source of energy. But, there are obviously hurdles to it. Like I said, the production of tritium, which is, how much world supply do they have of that? But it was an interesting thing. So there are things going on in the background that countries are involved in to bring nuclear energy into the world, not based on the fission concept, but more based on fusion.
That's an interesting one. I haven't really heard of that.
I mean,
one.
there's no fusion power plants currently running. It's always been more of a concept, hasn't it? I remember hearing about like the concept of cold fusion back like 20 years ago, and they were talking about doing it on like a microscopic scale in laboratories and stuff like that. But like, yeah, like if they harness the technology, it would be amazing. But it's a question of whether they've got the political will and also the scientific know-how to do it and to do it safely and be able to harness it. It's,
and the time frame, really.
And the time frame,
Because,
yeah.
if you want to get that, you want to make it safe. Yeah, we know we've got
this
other technology here.
Yeah, this ITER group was launched in 1985. So you'd think that, you know, they must be getting close to. And if you have a look at their website, it's really interesting stuff on there. I think they're making advances that are led in the right direction. And like any technology, I guess, it starts off really expensive and difficult, but then over time becomes more economical and more available.
It's an interesting one. I mean, yeah, I don't know how much work's going into it. I don't know if there's much political will for people to be exploring it with the amounts of money they would need to get into the science and the materials manufacturing to get it all done. But hopefully, hopefully they would.
Probably need a really generous philanthropist like Mr. Gates instead of making masks for cows to maybe invest in nuclear fusion technology.
Yeah, but then if we got it and it was really good and it was really cheap, I don't know, would that be a problem?
Yeah, possibly.
I did read something that the Gates Foundation looks into nuclear energy.
Yeah, right.
I didn't write or take too much interest in it, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
anyway, I found that interesting. So I guess there are things being done in the background.
Yeah, I'm just looking online here. I think Bill Gates is maybe talking about fusion here, the sort of generation you were talking about. But I mean,
I'd rather Bill Gates involved in nuclear fusion and that sort of investigation as opposed to health and vaccines.
Fake meat.
Well, the thing is, we've got these really ambitious environmental targets around carbon sort of penciled in for like 2030, 2050, etc. We kind of got to get a move on, don't we? Like it seems like at the moment with the, not war in Europe, but the war in Russia affecting Europe, it seems like we're going backwards. These super green countries like Germany, they're paying like massive prices for their power. They've got very limited power. They're going back to coal. And then you look at countries like France, they're kind of just cruising along. They're doing well. They've got very cheap, very reliable power. And then you've got like the US having this debate saying, well, nuclear is too expensive. It's like, well, where does the truth lie? Like, I'm sure it seems like politically we're talking about it in Australia at the moment, and it may be one of the topics that gets discussed around the next election, depending on like which party gets in. But
the economics of it and the environmental impacts, you kind of have to look at the cost of making one has been discussed at sort of $27 billion, around about, which is
that's about what I came up with too. Yep,
a higher capital outlay, but then the low direct fuel costs at the end of that.
And we have it in Australia. Like we've got so much of it. We've got it in WA. Like we mine uranium.
Yeah,
we're not short on it.
And the cost factor is including in that is decommissioning it, building it, and waste storage. So they have all those things built in. It's an upfront cost, yes. It's quite large. It sounds like a lot of money.
Yep.
I mean, it is a lot of money, but if we don't think about it or the discussion isn't there, and because they take sort of, I've read anywhere between sort of 8, 10 to 25 years to build and commission.
Yeah, I've sort of heard on average around the 15-year sort of mark.
Yeah,
yep.
If that's something that we need to be thinking about now, we probably need to get going. The environmental effects or the impacts of fossil fuels, there's no sulfur dioxides, heavy metals, nitrogen dioxides, mercury, other heavy toxic pollutants into the atmosphere that fossil fuels do.
There are none.
We talked about the footprint of building one is small, as opposed to these large solar energy farms and wind farms that take up a lot of space, and the destruction of, animal species and bird species and things with the wind. I guess the concerns around nuclear energy are the uranium mining, radioactive effluent emissions and sort of waste heat, those kind of things.
Yeah.
And I guess, I can't remember where I looked at it, but the nuclear industry, including the building of weapons, contributes to less than 1% of background radiation globally.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of natural radiation occurring in different levels around the world, just depending on natural quantities of like naturally radioactive minerals and things like that. So
and it prevents about 2 million metric tons of CO2 a year as compared to if we had to use fossil fuels.
Yeah. And not to mention, like you said, all the other shit that goes up in the air with that CO2, even if you're worried or not worried about CO2, all the other actual pollutants are quite significant.
Yeah.
I mean, and let's not forget, Australia, let's not get too much on our high horse. We've just committed to these nuclear submarines. We're going to spend like $333 billion building these nuclear subs. I mean, there's not that much difference. A nuclear sub has a nuclear reactor in it. So let's not get on our high horse and say, oh, as a country, we've excluded nuclear, we're not going to do it. Maybe we could have that argument 3 years ago and we had no nuclear subs on the timeline and we were going to go with the French bloody electric subs or whatever. But we're building nuclear submarines for, I'm looking at an article here, $368 billion.
It's interesting we want to build...
I mean, you were just saying, what do you reckon the cost of one is? Like sort of like
27, I've read somewhere.
Let's say 30 billion. So it looks like here we could probably build, about 12 nuclear plants for the cost that we're getting our nuclear subs for. I imagine if we built 12 strategically placed nuclear plants around the country, we could pretty much power a very large percentage of our population with that. And then those plants would probably have a 40, 50, I've even heard 80-year sort of lifespan bandied around with new technology.
Yeah.
For a product that we can mine in our own country, uranium, and then all you have to do is get rid of the waste. I mean, we're going to have to get rid of waste on our subs anyway.
Well, they're talking about
it's a great point, Smithy. It's a great point, Smithy, but it's not aesthetically pleasing, is it? So for a politician, it's fine to pump all that money into defence. That sort of warms people's hearts to know that they're protected and whatever. But to build up all these power stations for the same amount of money, you can have all this uproar and protest and all that. So for a politician, they want to stay well clear of that, don't they?
Well, apparently, yeah. It's a funny one, isn't it? It's a funny one. Like I'm not against having some solar. I think solar's a good idea, but I don't think it's the sort of technology where you throw your hat in and go, fuck it, we're going to go 100% solar because...
all the chips in the table for solar.
Let's put all our chips on the table for solar. We don't have the battery storage technology. So renewables like wind and solar are always going to require backup energy.
For 10 hours of the day, you can't use solar energy.
Yeah,
in
exactly.
Australia.
Exactly.
I get we've got a lot of sun. That's great, but
got tons of sun. We've got tons of space. So solar makes some sense for us.
Yeah,
but it's not like the only solution, and it's not a zero carbon solution either.
No, I love my solar. I can run during the day. An air conditioner and the
makes
pool
sense, right?
pump. Those kind of things. It makes sense. Washing machines and whatnot. But on a large scale.
I saw a stat that nuclear power is 2.5 to 3.5 times more reliable than wind and solar. So wind was about 36% reliable and solar was 25% reliable compared to 92% reliable for nuclear energy. And they were figures obtained in the States in 2022. The figures are there to see in black and white.
I mean, if you look at the places around the world where they've gone big into solar, you look at like California, you look at Germany, like they've had issues with power outages and stuff like that because they've gone into it heavy and, like what we've discussed, they've been closing down other alternative sources of electricity generation. And unfortunately, like when the grid goes down now or there's issues with power, particularly the elderly, people die. Like if you live in a cold region like Germany and all of a sudden you've got no heating, that's a problem.
Yeah,
that's a problem.
Yep.
So
I wonder whether the cost of building those reactors could be overcome by, in our climate change episode, we discussed how they're sort of talking about creating modular reactors so that every reactor is the same. And now having a look at this fusion reactor that on the ICA website, I'm just wondering whether that fusion reactor, that tokamak concept, could work in if they create that could work in a modular type reactor, which can then be the same around the world and it's a cost basis thing that they're all the same. They all cost the same, and probably cheaper to make, cheaper to sell when they're all the same.
Yeah, I guess. Do you reckon countries are a bit funny about it? Because obviously, if you have a nuclear reactor and it's like the script of a movie, terrorists get in there and fuck with it and cause it to melt down. Do you reckon each country is very cagey about how they build it for security purposes, so they're not wanting, to share the love and share all their plans? I don't know. Maybe that's a barrier towards everyone constantly reinventing the wheel to make these plants. Because, like you say, you would think that it would just be. I'm sure with a coal-fired plant, I'm sure every time they're not redeveloping and redesigning it, and I'm sure there's very much a set of blueprints that they use to build a plant.
Buy off the shelf.
Yeah, more or less. Yeah, we need a 100 gigawatt plant, whatever. Boom. Here's what you need. I'm sure all reactors are very similar.
Well, you don't want to reinvent the wheel every time.
We're not splitting the atom here. Oh, well, we are, but.
Yeah, very good. I guess when the fossil fuel price is low, people's appetite for nuclear energy is low. But at the moment, our fossil fuel stores are high. Oil is high. Those kind of things. At least that then opens the door for the talk about they talk about a nuclear renaissance at the moment, and people are now discussing it, which is a good thing. Look, the technology you would think would have come a long way. I think one of the reasons Chernobyl, I haven't really looked into it too much, but one of the reasons was the technology wasn't there to communicate that something was going wrong.
I think they went outside of some parameters as well, and they were doing some tests, and they sort of got rid of a few of the safety safeguards to try and test something. From what I've heard...
there's definitely human error involved in that.
From what I've heard, even Fukushima was human error, so...
Yeah.
Oh, because wasn't that...
It was obviously hit by a...
Weather... There was a tsunami?
Earthquake / tsunami. But I think on top of that, the actions that followed were not correct within the protocols, which caused it to.
Right.
But I mean, I've heard the analogy, and it kind of makes sense to me without being an expert in nuclear physics, that if you look at, like, a lot of these plants were built in the 60s, which probably means they were designed in the 50s, right?
Yeah.
You look at what we're doing with jetliners in the 50s versus today. We've had an exponential increase in the amount of people...
Or phone technology.
In air travel or phone technology or any sort of technology. We've really come a long way.
Yeah.
So, I mean, everything we do now, we have more knowledge, we have better understanding, we can do it better, we can build better aircraft, we can build safer cars, we can build safer everything. I'm sure, to a certain extent, that also goes across to the safety systems you put in place, the computerized systems that won't allow a reactor to go outside of some parameters. If something starts to run away, it automatically gets shut down. We've got bloody shielding. We've got all these things. I'm sure we can build, in this day and age, a relatively safe nuclear reactor. And particularly in Australia, we don't have earthquakes, really, to any big extent. So you look at, obviously Fukushima was a tsunami caused by an undersea earthquake that sort of affected it, wasn't it? Maybe don't build them right on the coast. Yeah. Maybe don't build a reactor where there's a fault line or whatever. Like, we don't really have those problems in Australia. We don't have geographical constraints. We don't have much space.
Yeah.
Like, I'm sure there's an optimal distance to build a reactor from a city so that you can transmit power into the grid. But it doesn't necessarily need to be right on the coast, nor would you do it that way, because that's usually like quite premium land. You might build it, 30 k's inland or something in an area that's not very densely populated. And then off you go. I mean...
I think it would be great if it was talked about and there wasn't this, like Rooster was talking about before, just a complete shutdown of, no, it's no good. Don't worry about it. Don't even look into it. It's no good.
Well, do you guys want to go down a quick little conspiracy rabbit hole? Just a little quick one.
Yeah.
So, Roo, you were talking about, what was that group you were mentioning?
Yeah.
Just before that was talking about the fusion, the climate. So you look at, like, in America, they've got the... have you guys heard of the NRDC? NRDC, I think it stands for Natural Resources Defence Council. And so it sounds real good, right? Like Natural Resources Defence Council, and
defending,
all about defending the earth and the natural resources and all that sort of stuff. Well, I believe they're quite anti-nuclear and pro-renewables, right? So they love their solar, they love their wind.
Yeah.
and they've had quite a big impact into some of the states in America, sort of closing down or decommissioning power plants and uptaking all this solar. Well, I heard a guy talking today, and I obviously haven't really had time to confirm or deny it, but apparently one of their large backers is that nice philanthropic company called BlackRock, who you guys might have heard of.
Yeah.
So there's always entanglement with big business is what I'm saying. Like, people always have an angle to try and make money because that's our nature.
Yeah.
So, you know, if you're a philanthropist but you're also a businessman, you know, maybe you're looking at renewables and you're going, oh, these things kind of have a shorter lifespan. They need to be replaced all the time, and there's quite a long, supply chain thing. Maybe you don't want to build a nuclear plant that just runs for 40, 60, 80 years relatively problem-free once it's built, because maybe there's not a lot of money in it. You know,
Mate, I reckon you've hit the nail on the head there, Smitty.
Like, I'm always suspicious when you can't really have the debate. Anything we can't debate, I'm suspicious of it.
Yeah.
Let's fucking debate everything, and bad ideas will naturally peter out because they'll get hammered in debates, and you'll listen to a debate and go, fuck, this is indefensible.
Yeah, we can't have that. That's just no good.
Let's have a debate that we should get children smoking. Like, you'll get fucking hammered immediately.
Yeah.
And everyone go, you're a fucking idiot. You know, I'm getting a bit razzed up here, but it's like, let's debate everything in a scientific manner without being idiots about it.
Yeah.
And like, the best ideas will come to the surface.
Yeah.
As soon as we say, oh, we shouldn't debate it, you should just go renewables. I'm not against renewables, but I'm against like all renewables because I think it's a stupid idea.
Yeah.
Like, if you want to have all renewables, you need to have a backup power source, and usually that is, gas or coal or whatever it might be.
Yep.
And then if you want to have the debate that, well, we're all terrified of carbon, well, then that starts to fall down real quick, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, fuck it. Let's have 95% nuclear or whatever. A little bit of wind, a little bit of solar if you want.
Yep.
And maybe in a few decades' time, we will have like developed all the technology, and maybe some of those renewables will get a hell of a lot better, and we'll go, hey, man, we got really good battery technology now. We found more minerals to use, or we've found a better way of doing it, and it's less likely to bloody burst into flames, and you know, it's more affordable. And then we go, hey, cool. But I think for right now, to me, in my uneducated point of view, nuclear seems like an option we should be at least looking at.
Yep.
Yeah, I agree.
Yep.
I reckon that's the answer, man.
It's one of them.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, there's definitely pros and cons, isn't there? You know, with everything, you've got to come up with, you know, not risks, but benefits, and are they outweighing other things? You know, it's carbon-free electricity. There's a small land footprint, high power output, reliable energy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, look, we got to mine uranium. There's sort of
Which we do
anyway. You know, there's high upfront costs. People are concerned about malfunctions, but that if you look at the 3 instances that have occurred, you know, over the period of time, 18,000 reactors, 36 countries. It seems fairly reliable, and seems like maybe we should be debating this and having a good discussion on, can we have this and solar and some wind, and see where we go from there.
I heard this interesting argument that I've heard actually over several years. It's popped up sort of in my stuff I listen to every now and then, and it's actually you guys are obviously very much across like the principle of hormesis, and like a little bit of something bad causes like a little bit of a physiological stress, which causes you to adapt and ends up being a good thing.
It's what we're all about, the modern ancestral man.
I mean, there's nothing less
Cold
ancestral than nuclear power, right? Like splitting atoms, but we're talking about that. But you know, that's the modern part of modern ancestral. But I've heard this argument that there is some studies around the world that have shown people who live in slightly higher background radiation areas actually have better health.
Oh.
And there's been some speculation that possibly there is some level where it does become like a mild background hormetic stressor, which actually can be beneficial.
Right.
I don't know if that's true or not. Who knows? But
in what way, Smitty? Beneficial in exposure to radiation?
Just in terms of lifespan and longevity and general markers of health.
Yeah, right. I would have thought the absolute opposite.
Yes. Yeah. Well, that's Anyway.
Sort of like the old 5G concept.
Yep.
That'll be fine. It'll be fine.
Yeah.
Interesting though. You know, and hey, just the last little fact that I come up with, and I found this quite interesting because I could relate to it. You know, a gridiron field in America, you know, the US football.
Yep.
They reckon that all of the nuclear energy used in the USA over the last 60 years could fit in a gridiron field. This is the waste, I mean, of nuclear energy.
Yep.
Could fit in a gridiron field at a depth of 9 metres.
Wow. There you go.
So for 60 years, powering all of the USA, all the people that are, I don't know, the population of the US, for 60 years, that's the area that the waste takes up. I found that an interesting concept.
Wow.
Mm.
All right, can we finish on that, mate? That's been a good chat.
Good. Nice to see you, boys. I reckon next week's episode I might also be coming down here again because I'll be travelling back and forth for a while with my dad. So next episode I possibly will be on the phone again if that's okay.
Okay, mate. No dramas. Family first. Take it easy and look forward to the chat next week.
Yeah, thanks, boys. Good on you. Appreciate the understanding. Good to chat with you. And I guess it's air guitar time.
It is.
Air guitar's ready.
Good on you, mate.
See you, boys.
See ya. Wait.